It's good to see you. Come on in. Today I'm rendering lard. I looked at the package of lard from the grocery store, and it was a really, really horrible thing. I discovered that it contains partially hydrogenated fat. It also contains preservatives, something called DHT or something like that. I'll look it up. But it contains preservatives. And I don't want preservatives. I hear they're not really great for you. So Brock went out and picked up pig fat, pork fat, from the butcher. And right now I have 2.5 pounds cut up in the pot. I'm just going to cut up another 2.5 pounds and call it good. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to cut up this fat. I'm going to render it into lard. Then I'm going to take the rendered lard, I'm going to put it into canning jars and seal it up. And some of it will get used to make soap, because that's really why I'm doing this right now, because Brock wants some soap. So this isn't really the easiest thing to cut. I don't think that my knife is really as sharp as it could be. And I don't know where my honing rod went. But I'm cutting it into pieces. Now I understand that ideally I would put this through a meat grinder and make the pieces as small as possible. Oh look, I can peel this piece off, I think. So I have seen people do this. They, in order to get as much meat or as much fat as possible out of the meat, they put it through a meat grinder. And I have a hand crank meat grinder that was given to us by a neighbor. And I don't know, I must be doing something wrong, or maybe it's missing a piece, or maybe I just don't understand meat grinders. But I worked and worked and worked, and I got about 2 tablespoons of ground up fat, and no more would go through the little holes. So while I research that, I still want to get some pork fat rendered. I still have 7.5 pounds in the fridge besides this. So this will, I'm sure, render me enough to make Brock's soap, because I only need about 3 pounds of lard for his soap. We have olive oil and coconut oil for the rest. All right. Now it looks like this is in the package kind of in layers, and pulling the layers apart makes it a little easier to cut. You'll notice I'm holding on to the knife with a rag. The knife gets really slippery. I don't do anything neatly. I handle stuff with my hands, and then my hands get covered in fat, and the knife will split. And so the rag itself is giving me a better grip, and I'm less likely to have that knife slip or spin in my hand. My grip has never been the greatest. So, all right, we'll get another layer. Cut this into pieces. Pulling that apart in layers definitely makes it easier to cut. All right. So one of my big goals after we move to the homestead in Michigan is to be able to get pigs. And we've been doing some research, and I really like the Cooney pigs for a lot of reasons. One being that they're good fatty pigs. And I want to be in a position where most of my fat is either lard or butter. Butter for the table, butter for some of my baking that you want to have a real buttery flavor. I would use butter for a pound cake. I wouldn't use lard for that because part of the pound cake is the buttery flavor, you know. But I want to have pigs. And if I'm going to have pigs, I might as well get started now learning how to use their products, including making my own lard. So one person that I have seen rendering lard on YouTube is Carolyn at the Homesteading Family. And I will leave a link in the description to her video on rendering lard. She doesn't know who I am. She and I are not affiliated in any way. But I will definitely put a link in her description so that you can see how she and her family render their lard. So I think we're going to start just with what we have here. I'll wash those up in a bit. And the next step, I am told, is to put some water in the pot so that it's not frying on the bottom. I don't think I need a lot of water. Might need a little bit more than that. I love these little metal cups. My mom gave them to me before she died. They come in different colors, and I don't know if they're toxic or not, but they're just little, I would imagine probably aluminum, but they're coated cups. Great for cool drinks. Don't drink something hot out of them. All right, and the next thing is I'm going to turn my pot on very low. I've turned it on to the lowest setting, and now I am going to find the lid and put the lid on. I'm going to pause you while I do that. Okay, the lid is on nice and snug, and I think there is probably room for another 2.5 pounds of fat, but the truth is I don't know how much that will cook down as it renders, and so I don't want to have too much in there and risk it overflowing. I wouldn't thank me for that. My husband wouldn't thank me for that. The fire department wouldn't thank me for that. So now I'm just going to go ahead and pause the video and wait for this thing to do something. And once it starts to actually do something, I will come back. So it's been about 15 minutes or so. I actually had to turn my stove up a little bit because it wasn't even getting warm. Like I could lay my hand on the burner. It was doing nothing for me. So I turned the stove up a little bit. And you remember I only put about 2 cups of water into the bottom of the pot. And it is starting to render out. Now a lot of that is water. Any meat has a lot of water in it. Fat has water in it. I learned that when I was trying to lose weight. Fat has water in it. But right now there is a whole lot more liquid. It's just barely steaming in there. So I'm going to stir it up. And I'm going to put the lid back on. I'm going to cook it a little longer. Okay, let's take a look again and see what's happening now. Well, it's a little warmer. It's boiling. The fat's turned rubbery. Can you see it bounce? Well, we're just going to keep on cooking. I understand this is a pretty long process. I only filled this halfway full, and I'm glad I did, because I think that any more and it would be hard to stir this around. Kind of smells like pork. We're just going to let that cook a little bit longer. It's been about another hour, and we're going to check on this and see how much more has rendered. And look at that. That is so full of liquid. Now I understand that this fat's going to go down to hardly anything. So we're just going to keep on going. Brock called me a few minutes ago. And I said, well, I'm hoping to get 3 pounds of lard out of this 5 pounds of fat. I really don't know how much I'll get. I said, because I need 3 pounds of lard to make you your 2 loaves of soap that you want. And he said, oh, you're doing this for me? Yes, I'm doing this for him. All right. We're just gonna keep cooking. And what I'm doing right now is, you know, these pieces were pretty big going in there, but I'm finding that some of them are breaking up a little bit now as I push down as they're cooking. And so I'm hoping that maybe by breaking them up, more and more of that fat will release. Look at that. We're already getting little meaty bits that are not very much fat in them. Oh, I can't pick that up. A little meaty bit, another little meaty bit. So I'm looking for a blade for my meat grinder. My meat grinder is a Best Made number 2 meat grinder. Well, I can't find reference to a number 2 meat grinder anywhere. It is vintage. It was given to us by a neighbor before he sold his house and moved into not assisted living, senior living. But I just can't find anything on this brand. I can't find anything for a number 2 meat grinder. The hole that the meat comes out of, the what is it called, the plate with the holes in it, that's like 2 1/8 or 2 1/4 inch diameter, and it has a square center for the blade to sit on, and that square center is a 1/2 inch square. So I've been looking and looking and looking, and I finally stumbled upon Layman's, and they sell blades for meat grinders. And their number 5 is smaller than the 2 inches that I thought I was looking for. But if the hole in the center of their blade is 1/2 inch, then I will order that and see if it'll fit on my meat grinder. And if it will, then next time I render lard, I'll be able to grind up my fat, and hopefully the process will go a little bit faster and more efficiently. But for now, we're just breaking up this fat, and more of it is coming out. All right. Let's go ahead and put the lid on that, and I'll come back again in a few minutes. Oh my. We now have more liquid than solid. Look at that. That is wonderful. And I'm just breaking it up a little bit more. So I started to say before that we were looking into different pigs, and I'm looking for the I think I'm going to get the Coonies. Aside from the fact that they're extremely cute, I understand from doing a little bit of research that Coonies can be 100% pasture raised. Now, where we're moving to in the Upper Peninsula, they're not going to be outside on pasture, so I'll have to have hay for them, good high quality hay. But just the fact that they don't have to have all of those extra grains and things like that. They will turn grass and multiple kinds of grasses and different plants that grow in pastures. They will turn that into bacon, and they will turn it into lard, and they will turn it into pork chops and ribs and hams. I'm all for it. So we'd like to keep a pair, a breeding pair, and let that breeding pair be our pets. And then the babies, we can raise up a couple for ourselves for slaughter and sell off the rest. And that will help offset some of the costs. I don't know. I've never done this before. I've never been a homesteader. So I don't know how that'll work out. That liquid is so white. That is amazing. I need to find out if I can just use a sieve to strain this when I'm done, or if I have to have cheesecloth or whatever. I have cheesecloth, but I just don't know if I need to use it. So while this cooks a little bit more, I'm going to go do some research. So it's been about 10 or 15 minutes more, and I have broken up that fat a little more using a potato masher. Not the ones with little squares, you know, because I think that would plug up too much. But I like this potato masher that has the wires, just a wavy wire. And all I did, since this fat is partially cooked, it breaks up really easily, and I broke it up more with this potato masher, and the pieces are now much smaller, and I believe it is going to render out even more. At least that's what Carolyn Thomas over at the Homesteading Family channel has said in her videos on lard, that the smaller the pieces are, the more actual lard you're going to get. So I also found out from watching her video that even though people often recommend that you put water in the bottom of your lard pot, you really don't want to do that, because then it's too hard to get the moisture out and you're introducing water into your pot. Now there is going to be water coming out of the fat anyway, but if you want to keep it for long-term storage, she says just go low and slow and avoid adding water, and that'll allow you to get more out. So we can see that the pot is boiling, and I've just been watching a couple of the Homesteading Family videos on lard. And she says that as long as it's boiling, there is water in it. And so you got to keep it going until there's no water left. And also, she says, do not turn it up. She says keep it very low and slow and keep stirring it periodically. I actually have a little bit that seems to have stuck to the bottom of the pot. It's not burning or anything like that. I just don't think that I have stirred it enough. So, but this is a heavy bottomed pot, and that is so that we don't burn the lard as we're cooking it. I've also taken the lid off so that any water that is in that can start to evaporate out. Okay, as you can see, the fat is really rendering out really well now, and there's more and more liquid compared to the solids, but also some of the solids are starting to change color a little bit and are starting to look a tiny bit golden, not actually like they're fully cooked golden. And what we're looking for is for all these solids to turn golden brown, and that'll be time to take them out. So we'll keep on stirring, make sure there's nothing stuck to the bottom. All right. Okay, so now we're at the point where it doesn't really look like it's boiling anymore. It's just kind of simmering, and you can see these fat bits are actually starting to turn light golden brown. We're going to cook it a little bit. All right, so now you can see that the pieces of fat have turned golden brown, and they are kind of light and crispy in texture, not hard, but light and crispy. So I am going to use a spider and pull them out and start those draining on some paper towel. So I'm just going to lift the camera and let you see. There is a little bit of boiling action still going on, but very little. And once all of that movement and the bubbles are completely gone, we're going to strain through some cheesecloth into a ceramic bowl. There's no sense in me putting this into canning jars, first because I intend to use almost all of it on soap right away, and second because I do not have a metal canning funnel, so I have to go get one, and so I'll have to do this all over again when I can actually store some. So I'm going to go ahead and pause you again, and it probably won't take 5 more minutes, and I'll be back to actually start straining this out. Okay, the fat is done rendering, and you can see down in the pot there's no movement. It's just sitting there. So now there's no bubbles coming up. All of the water is rendered out, as well as all the fat is rendered out. I have all of the cracklings out, and the truth is I don't have a gallbladder, so I can't eat a lot of fat all in one sitting. So I tasted them. They tasted good, but when fat squirted into my tongue, I was like, yeah, 2 or 3 bites, I'm done. So it's not for everybody. Anyway, the next thing that we're going to do is just ladle the fat through a cheesecloth, which is in a metal strainer. Do not use a nylon strainer. Use a metal sieve with cheesecloth. There are also filters. You can use a coffee filter. There are also filters that are actually made for straining fat. They use them in restaurants all the time. But we're just going to go ahead and strain this all through. And I am straining this into a bowl. If you're going to put it in jars for storage, then of course you want to strain directly into the jars so that the heat from the fat can make the jars seal. And you'll see that in the videos that I link in the description, but you'll also see it next time I render fat, because I will be putting it into jars next time. And there you go. We have a giant bowl, a 5-quart bowl of rendered lard, and that is from 5 pounds of pork fat. I'm just going to leave it here on the stove and allow it to cool naturally, and we'll see what it looks like in the morning. It's 7 a.m. and I just wanted to show you that my lard has finally solidified, and it's not pure white, it's creamy white. It's quite warm here in the house, and actually the lard is still quite warm, but it's not completely solid because of the temperature. But we have lard, and I can cook with this, and I can make soap with this. And if I had put it in canning jars and sealed it up, I could store this down in the basement where it's usually on average about 5 to 10 degrees cooler than it is upstairs. On a really hot day, it's even more cooler. So there you go. That is rendered lard. Thanks for stopping by. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support the channel, feel free to pop into the description and click the link to buy me a coffee. My first goal is to purchase a new microphone for my voiceovers. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.